All right, so my name's Matt Service. I own a company called Service Internet Solutions. Tonight I'm here as a Constant Contact authorized local expert. What that means is that I've been trained and taken testing on various different Constant Contact products, but more importantly, I'm here to deliver this content that was developed by Constant Contact as an educational and best practices about marketing with email and how that incorporates with social media. I will talk a little bit, I'm not going to talk specifically about Constant Contact tools, except if somebody asks me a question about them. I'm going to talk more about best practices and how do you be the most effective that you can be and make sure that you're measuring what you do and tell you how to be more effective with it. With Service Internet Solutions, I've been in business since 1996. We are a web development company. We primarily work with B2B companies, and we help them with a variety of different things. A lot that we do has to do with making their website more effective and more functional. And so we work with a variety of companies all across the country, here in Connecticut and all across the country. So we'll get started. So if we think elements of digital marketing, right? Today we're all about digital. We're talking about getting found, how on a mobile device or in search engines with Google, Bing, SEO, social, what we're doing to get out there and have people find us. We're going to talk about, and then the next phase is sort of engaging and nurturing relationships, engagement marketing. We'll talk a little bit about how the funnel has flipped. If anybody here has been in sales, you all know about your funnel. We'll talk about how the funnel has flipped a little bit. We'll talk about ways to drive action, whether or not it's, as Jenna said, if you got the newsletter from the library, it was delivered to you via Constant Contact. If you registered online for this event, you did it with a Constant Contact tool for events and registrations, but there's a variety of tools that are out there that you can use for any of these various different things, SurveyMonkey, that kind of thing. And then we're going to talk about analytics. How do you make better decisions about what you're doing? If you're marketing and you're not measuring what you're doing, you're really not marketing. What we want to always be doing is finding out what's effective and what works and doing more of it, and understanding what doesn't work and doing less of it. But the other way that we can look at these is, these are our prospects. These are our existing customers. This is where we're going to try and save some time or use our time. And this is where we're going to see whether or not we're making any money. What's our ROI for what we're investing? All right, so we'll talk about what are campaigns and newsletters, email and social, and why you really should be using both, whatever that is, and then what your next step should be and how you should get started. I will tell you, Jenna's got that sign-up list of mine back there. I know you've got a printed version of the presentation. If you want me to email you a copy of the presentation, you can sign that sign-up sheet at the end or at some point, and I'll email you a copy of the presentation as well. And if you have something that you can put your name on and throw it in this basket, only if you like coffee. I have a $10 Dunkin' Donuts card that we'll hand out afterwards to either throw a business card in or even rip a piece of that paper off and write your name on it. We'll see if you can get the Dunkin' Donuts card. All right, so here we go. At its core, marketing is all about eliciting a physical and measurable response. Remember I said we have to measure whatever we're doing. If we're not measuring, we're not marketing. So a campaign. Campaigns are where we push out content and we want to pull back some type of response. And we'll talk a lot about, I talk about conversions a lot, and that's how we're going to measure things. I like to think about conversions as opposed, Jenna said, I want to learn how to have a higher open rate. Open rate is nice, but a measurable action is even nicer. And so I think of that as a conversion. I think of it as whatever action you want them to take as a response to whatever your marketing is or your email that you're sending out. You want to measure what that conversion is. You want to have a specific goal in mind when you're doing your marketing so you have a way to measure what you're doing. And we'll talk some more about that. So what's a newsletter? This is our typical newsletter from this company. They're from this restaurant, and they're sending out, telling you about what's going on, what's the specials of the day, you know, what's happening. We'll talk a little bit about different types of newsletters, and you'll notice I go fairly quick. Please interrupt me. I'm open to questions at any point in time. There's a lot of material to cover. I'm going to try and keep this around an hour, maybe a little bit more, depending upon how much interaction there is. So please interrupt me at any point. Don't let me just drone on up here. It's nice to know that people are awake. They can raise their hand or just shout something out. So what do we do for newsletters? We want to keep our audience in the know. Maybe it's got something to do about that we moved. Maybe our hours have changed. In Suffield, the Kent Library is in a temporary location because they're doing work on the library. Maybe they're going to send out something with where their temporary location is. Maybe it's a press release. We've landed a new customer. We've launched a new product line, whatever that might be. Maybe we're going to do some type of special offer code within the newsletter, that if you use this offer code, you get 10% off, or you buy one, you get one free, whatever that might be. So these are all reasons why you might be sending out some type of newsletter. Let me back up first for just a second. I think that went around. We'll grab that up here.
Except for a person just coming in.
So how many people here are already doing email marketing of some type? All right. Next question is, how many people use Constant Contact? How many people use MailChimp? How many people are sending it out via their Outlook? Okay. And what other, the people that raise their hand, what else are they using?
Bad Beanie.
What's that?
Bad Beanie.
Okay.
We have Cloud Express too.
Okay. All right, so just gives me a sense of who's doing what. So the question is always, what do I write about? It happens whether or not it's in email, it happens whether or not it's on social. It's always, what do I write about? And you should write about what you know that they don't, your audience, your constituency, your whoever it is that you're communicating with. You want to write about what they don't know about. And in my mind, if you're in business and in business for a while, you definitely have knowledge that your audience doesn't have. And depending upon how long you're in business and what it is that you do, you're an expert in your field, right? Because you've specialized in what you do. So you know more than what somebody else doesn't know, what your audience may not know. You write about what you have access to that they don't. So you may subscribe, you may be a HR professional, and maybe you belong to SHRM, the Society of HR Professionals, and maybe you're getting newsletters from them, and it's information that maybe some of your clients are business professionals or business owners. You're going to see information they may not see, so you can write about that. The other thing is that original isn't required. It just has to be interesting and relevant. I mean, in one of my newsletters that I sent out, one of the things that I sent out was this little story about the first refrigerator that got a computer virus, because refrigerators are connected to the internet now, some of them, and the refrigerator got a virus. I thought that was sort of interesting. You know, I thought people might see, oh my God, now another thing to worry about. And I just heard something yesterday that I thought was pretty cool. So you got GM cars now that have OnStar, right? And it used to be when you'd go, if something was wrong with your car, the light came on the dash, you took your car in and they plugged in the little control and they'd tell you what was wrong with your car. Now if you have OnStar, well, for a while, OnStar is phoned home, and you might actually get a call saying there's something wrong with your car. But you have to understand now that with GPS and everything else, how much knowledge do these people have about what's going on in your life and what's going on? So sometimes it's interesting about this information that's all floating out there, and so some of that stuff, geeky stuff, I guess, I find it kind of interesting sometimes to ponder what information there is. So if it's interesting and relevant, you can curate content, right? We can do that with social media. We can subscribe to RSS feeds and learn information, and then we can distribute that to people who may not, tangentially it's of interest to them, but they may not be engaged at the same level you are.
Can you comment on copyrighted stuff?
You have to give the attribution to the person that you if you get it, right? There's certain things that are going to be, that can be general knowledge or out there, that's a news item, right? And you write something original about something that you heard. But if you're going to curate content, all you're doing is you're telling people, here's this story, it was reported in, Business Week, and you can give the attribution to them and they can click and read more at that source. So yeah, you don't want to plagiarize, or you don't want to steal it. You want to give the attribution all the time. So how much is enough? Think about the fact, and there's a slide up here, this is going to turn into it, but think about the size of the screen. I've got an old iPhone, so this one's a fairly small screen, but people are reading things more and more on mobile devices. So think about what you're putting out there. I think of less is more, just like with my kids. If you have young kids or have had young kids, and you start giving them too many choices, it's very hard for them to make the choice about what they're going to pick. So less is more. It also helps with your conversions that you want. If you keep the focus, then you're more likely to get the conversions that you want. Focus. And as of a year ago, 51% of any emails that were sent out through Constant Contact were opened on a mobile device. That was a year ago. It's over 65% now. So keep that in mind. Think about where people are reading things nowadays. And we'll talk some more about where they're reading it and when they're reading it when we talk about how do you figure out the best time to send your email. So pictures are definitely make a lot of impact. The picture's worth 1,000 words. But one of the things I want you to think about is being cautious in the way that you put your email together. Jenna asked me about using Microsoft Publisher to create the content for your email. One of the problems with that is you end up with an email that's like this, that basically the entire email is one image and there's no text, and we'll talk about why that's a problem here in just a minute. So pictures get 47% more click-throughs, but you don't want to over-rely on the images, and this is why. Well, next screen I'll tell you why. Sorry about that. You want to use alt tags with the images, so that if the image isn't displayed, they get a text representation of what's in the image. And depending upon the tool that you use, it will give you a place to put in that alternate representation of what's in the image. So you can describe the image, which might entice someone to download and see the image. And don't use images of your content. That's the one that I was picking out over there, where they basically did something that's nice and fancy and a great design. But if I don't have images enabled, or for me in Outlook, if your email's not in my address book, I have to request the image, and I don't see it by default. And even on my phone, there's times when I have to say I want to see the image as opposed to not. So in this case, if I haven't requested the image, what you're going to get is that X at the top. And if I haven't decided I want to download the image, this is what they're going to see. Now they're going to see some text message, right? But they're not going to see maybe the image that I want to see. Now just think about if this case here where the image isn't displayed is this one. They're going to see nothing, right? And depending upon the way that you're formatting your email and the images that you're using, the image may require that I've got to pinch this to see the whole thing, right? And I'm not going to see the entire image that I want to see, or even the entire message that I want to see, because the image could push the whole format out. So you want to be careful, understanding that the majority of email is now read on a mobile device. You want to be careful with your formatting. And we'll talk about that some more. Now, if you do have pictures, there's some great venues to use pictures in. How many people have a Facebook business page? What about do anything with Pinterest, Instagram, LinkedIn business page as opposed to personal page? Okay. So there's all kinds of great places that are visual channels, right? Your website's one good place that's great for it. Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook. These are all great places to make sure that you're using images. And you should also understand, or one of the things that I like to point out is that people are going to choose the channel in which they want to interact with you. If somebody decides they're going to, if somebody finds that you've got a Pinterest page and they like what it is that you're posting, they may never go back to your website, right? If they're following you on Facebook or Twitter, they may find that's their method that they're going to choose to interact with you. And as you get to be about my age, sometimes all this doesn't make sense to you, because it certainly doesn't always make sense to me. Personally, I don't use Facebook, but I have a Facebook business page, and I would recommend that if anybody's, in business and you're serious about it, there's a billion people there. You can't ignore that potential audience. In '96, when I started my company, I used to go out on sales calls with some AT&T people, and we'd go in to see these businesses, and they'd say, we'd be trying to tell them that they need hosting from AT&T and they ought to have a website from me, and they'd say, well, that's all fine and good, but my customers aren't on the internet. And then my question was always, well, what about the people that are on the internet? Why can't they be your customers? So it's the same type of thing. You can't ignore these potential areas as ways where you, depending upon what your audience is and what type of product or service you have, as alternate channels to promote your business. And as I was saying, people are going to choose how they're going to want to interact with you. So you can repurpose things in all these various channels. You don't necessarily need unique content in every channel, because someone is going to choose that they're going to come to your website. They may not spend a lot of time on Facebook, or if they spend time on Facebook, they may never go to your website, or vice versa. So it's perfectly fine to repurpose your content and use it in multiple venues. Questions? Am I going too fast? Are you totally bored? You're embarrassed, you don't want to get up and walk out? All right, so a little more of the meat and potatoes about things that we're going to talk about here about email. The question is, how does somebody figure out if they're going to read something now, later, or never when they get email? If you're like me and you get, 200-300 emails a day, it's pretty quick for me to figure out when I'm going to look at something. And for me, later becomes never, except in a very few cases. Later can become something for me if I'm thinking back to the very beginning about what do I write about. Because if I am subscribed to some of these things and I have, maybe I've got a folder that I have in my mail, and it's, email topics or something, or Facebook posts or whatever it is, and when I get something that might be interesting, or I think that it might be from a source that I might want to refer back to later, and I'm not going to look at it right now, I can just drag it into that folder, and maybe it's something that I'll look at later when I'm looking for something to write about. But for me, it's now or never. So how do we conquer now or never? What's going to make the difference about whether or not someone's going to read your email now or never? Who's it from? Is it from somebody that they recognize? If it's from somebody that they recognize, they're in their address book, for me, that means the images are going to download. Right? I might even see it in my preview. The way I've got my Outlook set up, I've got my, one side where the folders are, one where I list all my mail is, and I've got a little preview pane on the right. It allows me to quickly decide whether or not it's something I want to look at or not. What's the subject? Does my subject create some type of urgency, or is it Matt's November newsletter, and who cares? And when do you send it? And we'll talk a little bit about when is the best time to send something and how do you determine that. And it's not always Wednesday at 2 o'clock or at 10 o'clock. It all depends upon who your audience is and what your intent is and what you're trying to tell them. So let's talk about these a little bit more. Who's it from? How will you be most recognizable? Is it coming from Matt at SIS? Is it coming from, where's it coming from? You want to be, however you're going to be most recognizable to break through that barrier, and so somebody's going to say, oh, it's from Matt. I definitely want to see this. Think about where all the choices people have, and how do you break through that? And the last thing here about this is one thing I'll mention, and if you're using MailChimp or other mail providers, you have to give people a way to opt out and unsubscribe. So you want to make sure you always do that. I talk about this story of a business that I know who, and it's very analogous to this Canned Spam Act because the penalties are very similar. They actually sent out a fax to 5,000 of their customers. People they had done business with before, but they forgot the little thing at the bottom that says, if you want to be removed from our list, just call this number. An attorney in Chicago who apparently does this for a living got the fax and started a class action lawsuit on behalf of all the other people who got this unsolicited fax. And they sued him for $1.25 million, which is all based upon what the cost is. There's actually a penalty in the law about how much it costs for every single one you send out that's unsolicited. They ended up negotiating the whole thing down, and I think they paid this guy $40,000, but it still cost them $40,000 to make this guy go away. So it's the same thing with email. There actually is a penalty in the law, and someone can go after you if you're sending unsolicited commercial email. And I received something recently from a financial advisor in this area that if I told you the name, you'd probably recognize who they are. And it was sent by this person's Outlook, and they BCC'd everybody on the list, so they sent it from them to them and blind carbon copied everybody on the list. And it was an email about a seminar that they were running, and there was no way for me to get off the list. I don't know how I got on the list, but there was no way for me to get off the list. And I just sent them a little reminder, and I sent them a link to the law that maybe they want to think about making sure that they don't have somebody who goes after them. So make sure whatever tool you're using, you give people a way to get off the list. You want to always look great and have some brand consistency. You want to make it easily recognizable. Have a template that you use that's consistent with your color scheme, has your logo. Make sure you include the company name in text in case the logo doesn't show up. If it's appropriate, use some bold pictures. And one thing I'll talk about here, and it'll come up again, but these are all single columns. We used to be in olden days, back when you had to turn the crank on the side of your computer, we used to always have newsletters that would have 3 columns or 2 columns. They don't work very well in resizing for a mobile device. So the best practice or recommendation today is to have a single column for your newsletter. You may have heard the term responsive. 4 or 5 years ago, when people wanted a mobile website, we would build them a separate version of their website, optimized for a small screen. Now we do something called responsive design, which means the same website that looks good on a 24-inch monitor will automatically resize, squish itself down, all the parts will realign themselves, and it'll look good on a small screen. The same thing can happen with email templates. So depending upon who your provider is, and if they give you the option of mobile-friendly templates to start off with, those are probably responsive templates. And so they will automatically resize for a smaller screen. So you should choose responsive templates if you have the option. And if you have a website, you should make sure your website's responsive. I have a nephew, he's 33 years old, has a laptop computer at home, and the only thing he uses it for is to play Pandora. He does everything on his phone. He's got a Samsung Galaxy 5 or something, things almost as big as a tablet, and he does everything on his phone. Doesn't use a computer for anything, surfing the web, buying stuff from Amazon, does it all on his phone. So think about that as the way people are going to interact with you. Make sure that you've got your website designed in a way so it's mobile friendly as well. All right. So with the subject line, you basically have 2 seconds and 2 words for somebody going to open up the email today. Think about that. Think about what makes you make that decision to click and open up that email and look at it. So we'll talk about some examples of good and bad subject lines. March newsletter. Or if you're Habitat for Humanity, maybe it's tomorrow. We need 3 hammers. Can you help? Or Joe's Pet Store, and it's August in Simsbury, and it's 90 degrees out, and you come out of the shower, you towel off, and you feel like you're soaking wet again. And instead of Joe's Pet Store, it says, alert, help your dog beat the heat. Which one are you more likely to click on? Right? Create a sense of urgency. Or this one, still time. Jenna sent this out. Still time to sign up to come see Matt speak tonight. Right? So create a sense of urgency wherever possible. I mean, don't make it crazy, but where it's like any message in sales and marketing, you always want that call to action, right? You want them to take an action. On your website, you're talking about, the features and benefits of whatever you have. You should always have a call to action somewhere on the page. Pick up the phone, call me now, let's talk about it, whatever the case might be. Questions? Answers. All right, so when do we send? If, the general thing people say is you should send it Wednesday at 10 or Wednesday at 2 or something like that. But there's a methodical way to test this and figure out what's right for you. Monthly is common for how often people send them, but depending upon who you are, Bob stores, the clothing Bob stores, client of mine, I get mad at them. We used to send their newsletters out for them. They would create all the content and they'd have us put it all together and build it and schedule it to send it. And I got mad at them. I finally unsubscribed from their list. We're not sending, we still do work for them, but we don't send out their email newsletter anymore, so I actually unsubscribed. Because they would send out these things, if it's March in Connecticut, then the basketball teams must be in the tournament, right? So we would send out an email, the men are in the Sweet 16, and then the men are in the Elite 8, and the women are in the Sweet 16, and get your UConn stuff now, and every time, and they would have, and even with football, they would have 2 versions of every email ready to send, especially when they got later in the season. Did they win or did they lose? And there was 2 of every one, and then they would just decide based upon the outcome which one was going to go out. But it got so I was getting them every day. It was overload. And sooner or later, if you do that to your constituency, once a week might be too much. You don't know. You have to watch your unsubscribe rate and see whether or not people are still seeing any type of value in what you're sending. And then that's another way to see whether or not are we sending it too often. Is it information overload, or maybe not information overload, maybe it's perceived as garbage overload, right? I don't mind getting an offer that says, here's an extra $10 off a pair of sneakers, because with 3 kids, they're going through sneakers about every 2 months. But I don't need to get one of those every single day or a couple times a week.
Now, what would you consider to be a reasonable unsubscribe rate to kind of guide you on whether you're doing it right?
It should be measured, in my opinion, based upon your total list, it should be measured in decimal places. right? In something less than 1 as far as total percentage. I mean, because that's the way I'm going to measure it, because it all depends on how big your list is, right? But, I mean, if you've got 500 people on your list, I would hope, bless you, I would hope you don't get more than 1 or 2 every time you send the email.
So you think if you start getting more than that, then it's an indication that you need to change something?
There may be either the frequency's wrong, the content doesn't resonate with your people, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, I think you got to really think about it and then analyze and try and see, am I delivering value? Am I getting them too often? It could even have something to do with when you're sending it, because we can talk about that too. You know, in today's world, and it's part of this whole thing here, but more and more companies, even though this whole thing about BYOD, bring your own device to work, right? People are bringing their tablets, they got their phones. People have their phone, and now they want to connect to the Wi-Fi at work, and they want to do this, and they want to do that. More and more companies are blocking access to the Wi-Fi for non-business reasons. In other words, they don't want you to put your phone on their network because it's using up all their bandwidth, and their whole network slows down, and people are streaming music and everything else. So they're blocking access. In some cases, they're blocking access to webmail at work, Facebook, all this other kind of stuff. So you have to think about, who is my audience? Am I sending it to business people? Am I sending it to people who might be getting it on a personal email account address? Now, depending upon who it is you're sending it to, sometimes those cross over. I mean, my personal email goes into my business email. It sort of all crosses together just because it's easy for me. But in a lot of cases, you work for Aetna, you don't want a lot of personal email coming into your Aetna account. You're going to give people a Gmail address or a Yahoo address, Cox or whatever. So you got to think about your timing, and we'll talk just a little bit more about that. When are my readers most likely to take the action I want? I did one of these in Simsbury, Connecticut. There's a woman who writes a weekly newsletter about what's going on in the Berkshires this weekend. She told me she sent it on Mondays. She wondered why she didn't have a good open rate on Monday or a good click-through rate. I'm like, you're telling people what's going on Friday or on Saturday. It's Monday. I'm still sort of in work mode. I haven't gone into the weekend yet. And she was sending it during the day, which, goes back to what I'm saying. If I want to send it to you at your personal email address, maybe I should send it at 6 o'clock at night, not at 10 in the morning. Maybe I should send it on a Thursday, not on a Monday. So we'll talk about how do you figure out the best day. Take your list, divide it into 3 groups. I don't care if your list is 100 people. I don't care if it's 30 people. Divide it into 3. Select 3 days of the week as a test. And send the same message to all 3 at 3 times, to all 3 lists. Make a note of what the click-through rates are, or the open rates. And you should be able to know that with whatever tool that you're using. You should be able to get some analytics and statistics, so you're going to want to figure that out. Then take the same 3 groups. Take the best day that you found out and send it out at 3 different times. Now, it could be the next month or the next cycle. I'm not telling you to send the exact same message out to the people another time. But whatever the next cycle is, let's try and narrow down and find the best day and time. I've got a client I work with who wants to try and reach business owners. In testing for him, he found out the best time to send it was 6 o'clock on Sunday night. Because these business owners are their weekend is sort of over, and they're trying to figure out what's going to go on next week. And they're wrapping their head back around. They're sort of getting back into work mode. For that person, they had the best response 6 o'clock on a Sunday. And if you didn't test, he never would have known that. He would have said, I don't want to send it on Monday. I don't want to send it on Friday. Maybe I'll send it at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. And just pick something out of the air. Yes?
What do you consider a result? If you email an open rate, the email open?
Well, I don't want you to get open rates are important, because if I don't open it, I can't take the action you want me to take.
Right.
But I want to know about conversions. What action do you want me to take? So if you're the Infinity Music Hall and I send it out, do you care if I opened it, or do you care if I clicked and bought a ticket?
Okay, so you're talking about actual action.
I want the conversion, whatever that is. I picked up the phone, I joined your mailing list, I came to an event, I bought something on your website, maybe you want to get more likes on your Facebook page. So you found that when I sent it at this time, I got more likes. Maybe to get more likes on your Facebook page, when we go back to what do I talk about, if you want to drive likes on your Facebook page, maybe you give something away. Or you say, what do I give away? I don't know. How about the top 10 tips for how to cut back your shrubs in the fall? I don't know. Like us on Facebook for these tips. You know, there was a guy that I just recently, I was at doing another one of these in Salisbury, and he was a counselor that worked with behaviorally challenged kids. And I said, you're telling me you can't come up with the top 10 ways to deal with a child who does X? He goes, yeah. He says, I run into 10 different things every single day. I said, well, there, you got years worth of content to give away at the top 10 things. So it doesn't have to cost you something to give it away. Give away knowledge that you have that somebody else doesn't. Yes, Paul.
Thank you. When you unsubscribe, some sites ask for a reason.
Yep.
What do you think of that idea?
I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for a reason. I mean, it'd be nice to get the feedback.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, again, it's always figuring out what you're doing right and do more of it, and what you're doing wrong and do less of it. Right? So if you can get the feedback and they say, yeah, you send it too often, or it's just not of interest to me, or I have no idea how I got on your list, or whatever the case might be. But yeah, I mean, I think the feedback's good. I mean, I think, we're not talking about surveys here today, but I think, although Jenna's going to have a little survey for you to do at the end, but I think, whenever you have the ability to interact with your customers and get feedback, you should be getting feedback whenever you can. What was it like your interaction? I mean, look at the big I happened to call Amazon yesterday because we have a Blu-ray player, and my daughter's 10 and she's trying out for the Sound of Music play, and my wife says it'd be a great idea if she could watch Sound of Music, right? So I'm trying to watch, I have Amazon Prime and my Blu-ray player. I'm trying to watch Amazon Prime on my Blu-ray player to see if I can get Sound of Music for her to watch it on TV. And it wasn't working. So there was a number that says call them. I call them. And it turns out they actually had a problem with streaming to Sony devices. It's a known issue. It's something that got reported recently because it's worked in the past. And before I was off the phone with that person, I literally hung up the phone and I had a survey asking how was my interaction with them. Because they want to know how to provide better customer service. So whenever you can, be doing that. And so I think it's a great idea that you ask. If you have the ability with the tool that you're using to ask during an unsubscribe, collect the data and then read what people say and take action on it, hopefully. Don't just do the survey and not pay attention to it, because then you're wasting everyone's time. So now you know your best day and your best time. But don't be romanced by a high open rate. You want to measure those actions, right? We always want to know, is it better to have 500 opens and one person shows up here, or is it better to have 100 opens and 18 people are here? I'd rather have the 18 people in the seat. I mean, I would love to have a higher open rate, sure. But if it doesn't lead to whatever action I want taken, if I have a high open rate and my call to action is unclear, in some cases I might as well not send it. As opposed to I'm focused on what action I want them to take. I sort of drive them, down the path I want them to take. So ultimately they it's a good call to action. The offer is good, whatever the offer is, and so they're going to take advantage of it, and they're going to do whatever it is you want them to do, hopefully. We talked about this a little bit before, but 67% of people don't see images by default. I know in a lot of cases I have to ask to see the images. Text links will get more clicks than buttons. Think about the way we read. Put your logo in the left or in the center. And always include your company name in text in case the logo doesn't load, in case they don't have images enabled. Think about the newspaper above the fold, right? Well, now it's above the scroll line. Key action should be above the scroll line. Don't give too many choices. Make images clickable, and always test it on yourself and test it on your mobile device. If you have friends or colleagues with different device than you have, send it to multiple people to test it, because it might look different on an Android device than on an Apple device, different on a tablet, different on a... We're in the middle of working on a site for a guy, and there's some tools we have to test the responsive nature of the site on different size screens and devices. And if I go from an iPhone 4 to a Galaxy S5, the site looks totally different. Like the way it rearranges itself is different. Email is going to be the same way. You may see that line breaks are in a different place. Stuff like that. So test it, send it to yourself, and always don't just see how it looks, but make sure the links work. I got something from Constant Contact for people that are in the ALE program, the Authorized Local Expert program, about downloading this selling tool. And I went to click the link to download the selling tool, and it was broken. Now, I brought it to their attention, and we're a small group who's supposed to be paying attention, so they sent it back out to us again. But what are you going to do with your customer? How many customers are going to say to you, oh, by the way, do you know that that link's broken? And then when you figure it out, are you going to resend it with a subject line saying, I fixed the link, you can download the content now? It's a lost opportunity. So don't just look at see how it looks. Test all the functionality to make sure it does what you need it to do, so that you're going to be able to get those conversions. Because the person maybe just be frustrated. They happened to see what your offer was. They tried to click the link. They couldn't get there. Lost opportunity. So if we look back to 2008, less than 10% of small businesses were using social media as a marketing tool. Today it's more like 87, or last year it was more like 87%. It's a channel that we can't ignore. And you have to make sure that you pick the channel. You've got to think about where you're going to put your time and your energy. The different channels skew different ways, right? But in general, a lot of people are relying on social networks to guide their purchase. Because I put something up there that, you know, there's a picture of my house, it's got a fence around it, and I say I got it at Cape Cod Fence or Hens Fence or whoever it is. Somebody sees it and says, hey, that's a nice fence, I was thinking about getting one, and all of a sudden they're going to call the same place. So they're sharing their purchase stuff, information. And if you're a charity, people are definitely looking to see what's going on from a charity standpoint before they're going to make a donation. They're looking for the GuideStar rating or other ratings that are going to talk about it. They're definitely, and charities, nonprofits almost are very prevalent in this space. I don't know if there's anybody in here from a nonprofit. How many people's businesses are almost like a nonprofit lately? All right.
Not the American way.
So you got to have both. You got to do email and social. You use email to drive traffic to social. You know, you want to make sure that when if you're sending it out an email, you're giving ways, and we'll talk about this, you're giving ways people to like you on Facebook, to share your email that you sent out, share your message on Facebook. And then we're looking at Facebook and Google Plus and Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter. We're looking at those as ways to come back to your email news list, to your newsletter. You want to have a sign-up form there. Join my mailing list. Why do I want to join your mailing list? Well, you want to join my mailing list for special offers, tips, whatever it might be. You want to be consistent in your brand in all these different areas, right? So it doesn't matter whether or not you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube. How many people here have like a YouTube channel? I gotta find it. You're doing everything. I gotta figure out. YouTube is the #2 search site on the internet. YouTube is owned by Google. YouTube is a great, if you do a search on Google now, you will see YouTube results showing up in the results. It's a great optimization tool to drive traffic. And it can almost be employed no matter what you do. You could turn it into, I mean, I had some customers, I had a customer that sells magnetic chucks.
Magnetic what?
Chucks. Like, what's a magnetic chuck, right? It's used in machining. Not a very sexy thing, okay? Not so, I mean, and they didn't take a video of this machine running with their chuck on it. They actually created the video from a PowerPoint slideshow. That's how they created the video. But it was informational. It was how to use their product. They added tags and keywords when they put it up on YouTube. And they've actually gotten traffic to their website from someone going on YouTube and searching for magnetic chucks and finding their content, which then drove them back to their website. So I don't care, you know, you're a QuickBooks expert, right?
Right.
You could do little screen capture videos of hidden features in QuickBooks. How to generate that report that you want to get. Little how-tos. It continues to establish you as an expert. And then, you know, maybe someone's going to go to your website or do whatever it is that you want them to do. What do you want them to do? I want them to pick up the phone and spend some money with me. Well, that's what we all want, right? But look at the channels that you have and think about that. And if your product or service lends itself to it, you should avail yourself of YouTube. It's a great, great, great opportunity for you. You know, and again, consistency of brand, right? Whether or not it's colors, logo, sometime with messaging, and using all these various different channels to interact together to give people multiple ways to interact with you, because everyone's going to choose the way that they're comfortable interacting with you. And in a changing demographic environment. What's the fastest growing demographic on Facebook? Yeah. So 65 plus, fastest growing demographic. Again, consistency in their brand. They're being fun in some places, right? Pinterest, funny pictures. Around here we know these guys, right? Liberty Tax, they're the guys, they put on the green foam suit. They got the arrow that they spin at tax time telling you they ought to come in and get your taxes done. So we know who they are around here. But consistency in your brand, have fun with it. You know, you don't have to be stodgy and with the tie up and the collar buttoned. Be fun in the different channels where it makes sense to be fun with it, right? Did I talk this fast? I did. All right, so we'll keep on talking some more here. So we want to, wherever we can, give people a way to connect with us, right? When we're sending out an email newsletter, we want to use social media buttons to have people be able to share this newsletter, right? Put them right up at the top of the newsletter. Encourage them to share. Give them a way to like you on Facebook or follow you on Twitter. Give them away all the time to join your mailing list wherever possible. This is a little premature, but we'll pull this out early anyway. If you happen to be a Constant Contact user, once you log in Constant Contact and you go to the contacts button, there's a link, I think it says grow your list. But you can set up a way to text to join your mailing list. Doesn't cost anything. It actually generated this. This is what it generates for you for free as far as a sign. You could make this as fancy as whatever you wanted to, but the default thing that it does is generates this little PDF file you can download. You choose your code. It tells you if your code is available or not. And as long as you know your code and the numbers to text to, you could make this be anything that you wanted to. It's a great thing if you've got a retail establishment or a store or office where people are coming in, put it on the counter, right? You were going to raise your hand?
Yeah, how do you feel, what's your feeling on text blasting as opposed to email?
I would consider it intrusive, worse than email. I mean, it's more personal to me than email.
Like, I run programs through the town or whatnot, and if we've got to cancel a program because of weather, parents actually get upset if you email them rather than text them.
Well, yeah, that's different.
But I'll tell you, a lot of my younger people I work with are using that as a method to fill their programs within a 12-hour period. They're using that much more effectively than email. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, that's different, though. See, like I see that's... I mean, I get those too, right, for my kids. One of the options, if they're, depending upon the league site they're using, is, I want to get text notices of practices or games or changes. I use that. I don't think it should... I'm not ready to have advertising shoved down my throat that way. Or marketing, I should say. I'm not ready to be marketed that way yet. Although, more and more, I was talking about the cars before, there's some web-enabled cars that can be tied in with proximity marketing. If you don't know what proximity marketing is, right? But there's apps for it, where there's a company actually in right here in Farmington that came up with this way to do proximity marketing that worked through if you had your Bluetooth turned on and you had the app on your phone. So you had to download the app. And stores could put this little transmitter about the size of, not much bigger, a little bit deeper than this, but about this size. And they put that somewhere near the front of their store. And if you got this app open and you walk past their store, they would talk to each other. And it could send you an offer. And maybe it's the ice cream shop and it says, hey, come on in right now and get 2 ice creams for the price of 1. So proximity marketing is a big thing. It's very big in Europe. They have signs that can give you personalized messages. There's been some TV shows that talk about it. It was actually on 60 Minutes, had a segment on it too. But it's a very big thing. It's a very big coming thing. And some of the cars are actually doing it as you drive in a certain area. It does it by GPS. And it can figure that you're near an area. And they can do stuff with time of day and area. And it might be that it gives you back a message that, hey, are you getting tired? There's a Hilton down the street. Maybe you want to come in and see what rooms we have available tonight. So,
Apple Pay, it will do it automatically.
Apple Pay does it? Yeah, see, I haven't enabled that, but.
It lets you know who's accepting Apple Pay, by the way.
Right. So, I mean, it's coming, but, I'm not sure that I'm ready to be marketed via text yet.
There's a difference between notifying you, like something's canceled, and marketing to you.
Well, and I guess it's all about opt-in too. I mean, some people might be willing to get it, right? As long as it's opt-in, it's no different than email, right?
True.
The thing is that it's a lot easier, in my mind, my simplistic little mind, it would be a lot easier for me as a marketer, although I guess I still need to know your carrier, but it would be a lot easier for me to generate a whole bunch of telephone numbers, right? Because if you're in Simsbury, it used to be 651. Years ago, before we had all kinds of stuff, numbers are my thing, and so years ago, I never used to remember the first 3 digits of a town exchange, because I just knew what town it was. Oh, if it's Manchester, it's 643. So I'd only remember the last 4 digits if I wanted to remember a phone number. But think about it, right? If you're a marketer and you're unscrupulous, you could just generate millions of phone numbers and market to all of them. It's a little bit harder with email addresses to come up with knowing whether or not you're going to get a higher rate of undeliverables, I guess. And I guess if you're unscrupulous, you don't really care. But it's interesting for a conversation. I don't know. I guess if it's opt-in, I'd be okay with it. Because that's what those notifications are with the sports networks. I want to know, or with Southwest or an airline, I want to know if my flight's delayed or canceled. That's different to me. Use all the tools that are that are available to expand your reach. The hard-coded one, the handwritten one's the worst one. That's the hardest one because it's very hard then to get it into your email list. You don't want to have to retype everything. Chance of bad handwriting like mine, you're going to mistype it when you're doing it. So you want to use tools like this. You want to be able to have, Facebook does have a little Constant Contact does have a little Facebook widget that you can put on there. That's a join my mailing list widget, or app that works right with Facebook. Have your join my mailing list opportunities everywhere. Like I said here, they also have a tool with a QR code to scan to join. It's whatever people's choices are. Make it easy for someone to use it and do it the way they want to do it. Don't force down how you're going to do it. I was talking a little bit before in the beginning. Some of these presentations flow together for me, because we do other ones that are on social media marketing and event marketing, and so they all sort of cross with me sometimes a little bit. But we talked a little bit before about the funnel, right? And if you're in sales, who's here in sales? Anybody ever talk to you about the funnel? No? Yes? So it would always be, how much stuff can I get in the top? Because if you're a salesperson, what's your funnel look like? What's going to close in 90 days and 30 days and whatever? And the funnel was this idea that you got to have this big group of prospects, and eventually something was going to drip out the bottom. If you were lucky, you'd close a certain percentage. So with email and social now, let's talk about flipping the funnel, right? Because you start with your best customers, maybe, your evangelists. You start with one, right? That turns into two. They tell their friend, and their friend tells their friend. And before you know it, you've gone from having, one customer that was highly satisfied. They were the person that really did. They turned into the evangelist for your business because you've delivered a superior experience to them. And now they've told everybody. And so now you've got this larger group of new potential audience of customers or people. So it's a whole way of flipping the funnel. Think about, that's where social is going to help you. That's why it's important, even when you're sending the email. Maybe I've signed up for the email from the guy who's the therapist I was talking about that deals with unruly kids, because I have got an 18-year-old who just went off to college, and the last 2 years were a lot of fun. And button heads, So maybe I signed up for his newsletter because he had the top 10 tips for dealing with a teenager, right? And now I've gotten this email, and I'm still on his list because I've got 2 more younger ones coming up, and I figure I need to get all the knowledge I can. Maybe I can get ahead of the curve instead of chasing behind all the time. But now I've got, now you're a friend of mine, and you've told me these stories about the kid that you're dealing with, and maybe I'm going to forward the email to you, right? It's the same thing that's happening with social media. I'm going to say, I found a solution. Everyone's going to hear about it. It's going to flow through. It's, word of mouth. It's going to, the big thing 5 years ago was, or 10, longer than that, 10 years ago was viral marketing. How do we get it to go viral, right? It's the same type of thing that social can help us do and expand our reach. So be thinking about that, using it wherever you can. Always do everything you can to grow your list. It's another opportunity to spread the word about what you're doing, and then they might share it with somebody else. Come up with a calendar of what you're going to post and when. And it doesn't necessarily mean, you don't have to say, okay, I want you to have consistency. you know, there's some ways, I think I got a slide in this deck about 5 days of Facebook posts. What should they be? What could it be on? And maybe it's not an everyday type of thing. Think about ways to automate some of this, right? I talked before about curating content. There might be a post on my Facebook page right now while I've been here. I don't know. But that's from curated content because Constant Contact happens to have a blog about small business marketing. And I found other places like that. And I've identified tools that help me so that, and I've monitored that content for a period of time. I know that all of it's pretty good content. On average, 90% of it's going to be great stuff. So how do I make it so it auto-posts for me? So I don't have to think about this. I mean, for me, I know that if I don't schedule it, it doesn't happen. But I also know if I can automate things, I want to automate it. I don't want to have to think about it. If I have something interesting that I come across, I can always post it myself. But if other people are writing stuff that I think is going to be of interest to my customers, then can I automate that? There's other places besides the Constant Contact one. We do some stuff with search engine optimization, and there's a blog about search engine optimization. There's another one that's just about marketing on mobile. I have those set up so that when someone posts there, it automatically posts to Facebook and Twitter for me. I'm not worried about it, because the question is always, how do I have time to do all this? So find ways to automate some of it. I'll talk about that real quickly at the end. If you're interested in Constant Contact, Jenna's going to make me skip this slide. I should have taken this out. I'll skip that slide. So this is me, again, and for a minute I'm going to talk about another tool. It's not a Constant Contact tool. It's just the tool that I use to make it easier to post, that I've automated that posting to social media. This one's called Market Me Suite. There's one called Hootsuite. There's a variety of different ones. If anybody here utilizes WordPress, anybody use WordPress? One way in the back. All right, well, I won't talk about that then. Jenna will talk about that afterwards. We won't bore everybody else with that.
Please do.
All right, so if you use WordPress.
And bad things about WordPress.
All right, so say you use WordPress and you want to get content for your site. There's a plugin for WordPress called WP Robot, and you can tell it to follow some other things. So you want blog posts coming up on your site, you can curate the content. You don't have to worry about getting other people to author and trading with other authors and all that kind of stuff. So it can curate content from different sources to get posts onto your website. There's also tools and plugins that work with WordPress that when there's a post on your site, it'll automatically post to Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever you want the post to. So, I mean, WordPress is a great tool. We are all about, for me personally, we use a couple of different content management systems. We focus on what's called open source. I want the stuff you're not paying for, that's free. Basically, the tool is free. So we do a lot with WordPress. We do a lot with Joomla. Some people might be familiar with something called Drupal. We don't use Drupal. But we use WordPress and Joomla. And we've used WordPress for, I mean.
How are you spelling Joomla?
Oh, Joomla. It's another open source content management system. It's more sophisticated than WordPress. It's very good if you have multilingual sites. We have a client in Torrington that has, you more or less, you can develop your architecture for your whole main site, and it makes it very easy to translate that into multiple languages and link it all up together. And you can even detect where someone's coming from and display an automatic default language based upon the IP address of where they're coming from. It's more sophisticated than WordPress, but WordPress is a very powerful product. I mean, portions of the CNN site are powered by WordPress, Fox News. Every single CBS-owned radio station in the country runs on WordPress. WTIC AM runs on WordPress. So WordPress is a very powerful tool, and you have the ability to do a lot with it. It's very flexible and very easy for developers like ourselves to plug other stuff into it. and make it come inside WordPress and display within it. And from a social media standpoint, it's very easy to pull this other content in, and also to have stuff that gets posted in WordPress be distributed out to other channels.
What's the negative? Because I've heard from people that the conversions on it are nearly impossible and things of that ilk.
Well, I guess here's the analogy I'll give you. So WordPress can be seen, potentially, as a security risk, right? The problem is, it's no different than, everybody thinks Apple computers don't get viruses. Apple computers can get viruses. There's just, 100 times as many PCs out there, and everybody targets the viruses towards the PCs, right? And like any other software, there's always the potential for the software to get hacked. So with somewhere north of 100 million WordPress sites out there running, it's a very big target for people to go after to uncover any potential software vulnerabilities within it and to try and hack it. The keys are making sure that you do everything to lock it down as secure as you can. It's like other things. We've seen people who they're not very smart about the passwords they use for the back end. You want to use sophisticated passwords, upper lowercase numbers, special characters, 16 characters long, crazy stuff. I mean, just you want to make it as secure as you can and lock it down. There's all kinds of tools to help you lock it down. But we like WordPress. We've been using it for, at one sense or another, for probably 7 or 8 years. And we probably have hundreds of sites that are business sites that are out there running it with very few problems. It's just making sure that you don't, my recommendation is, it's no different than what they tell you about, don't go to Staples and buy a Wi-Fi router and plug it into your house and never change anything, because everybody who drives by your house can get on your Wi-Fi network. And if I'm not sure what the password is, so I can get into the admin side, I can go on Google and say, what's the default password for this, and I'm going to get the default password. And if you don't change anything, I can get right on your network at your house and maybe get back into your computer and do whatever I want. So with WordPress, it's the same thing. You want to make sure you lock everything up and just, don't take it at its defaults. Anyway, where was I? Oh, Market Me Suite. So Market Me Suite integrates with Constant Contact and MailChimp. It is not a Constant Contact product, but it's like all these other, it's like MailChimp, it's like, Constant Contact. It's a subscription-based service, and it's like a dashboard for social media. A web-based product. And so you can have an inbox where where you're monitoring different things. You could put all your different social media accounts in here, and it'll look for anything that's a Facebook post or anything that I'm following. I can set up, this can do my auto posting for me if I wanted to. If I wanted to integrate with Constant Contact, and I'm doing images in Constant Contact in my image library, or I'm writing emails or have events, I can click this little tab, and if I got an image here, I can drag it right over and have it be part of my post. And same thing with there's just some examples. I'm going to go quickly through some of this, but you can drag an image over that's in one place to the other and have it repurposed. It'll do the same thing with emails and with events. There's another cool thing here. This little tab, if you click this, it pops out. And if you're not sure what you're going to post about or write about, it'll do a Google News search. So you can come up with an idea about what I want to post about today. One of the other things that's cool about this is you can set up searches so that you can look for keywords that are in a Twitter post and set up a little inbox for an alert. It'll do real-time searches. So say that I'm a veterinarian here in Simsbury, and I want to set up a real-time search for whenever anybody in Simsbury or in this area does a Twitter post about, I wish I could find a great veterinarian in Simsbury. And you could have an inbox that's going to pop up that somebody asked, that posed that question, and you could answer back to them. Look at you, watching your face. So it's a kind of a cool tool like that. Also, you can do real-time searches with that. And you could set it up so it'll actually pop them in. It works like an inbox. It works like Outlook or something like that, or Gmail or whatever. You'd actually see searches that would show up here, and it would tell you how many were unread. But it would tell you that someone's searching for a specific set of keywords in the general geographic area. Assuming they've got like location services turned on their phone, which by default most people say yes all the time. And so it's just kind of a cool tool, helps you automate some of your social media.
That works for Twitter only?
I haven't tried it for something newer. The last time when I set it up about 6 months ago, it was on Twitter only. But I think they keep on, I'm getting emails from them saying they've enhanced the product. I just haven't taken the time to go see what they've enhanced it with. But they're adding more features. I do know they integrated with MailChimp. So just like there's a flyout for Constant Contact, I know they've integrated with MailChimp. And they're doing more and more to integrate and add more features. So you might want to check it out. And that's it for me. I have one question for you. Anybody listen to Click and Clack, the Tappet Brothers? We know Tom died, right? But the thing that what they always ask at the end of the show is, or what they say is, well, there you go, you've done it again, you wasted another perfectly good hour. So my question is did you just waste an hour and 15 minutes here, or did you learn at least one thing? I'm happy if you learned at least one thing, and it was worth your time. All right, so, wait a minute. Oh, I forgot. Here, Jenna, you come pull. Last chance. If your name's not in here, I have a $10 Dunkin' card. If you got something to scribble your name on and put it in the basket here. You got a business card. Rip a piece of paper off the back of the presentation. If you want the presentation emailed to you, there's a sign-up sheet for me in the back. You can put your name and contact information on that, and I can email you a copy of the presentation.
Forms, which I would be incredibly indebted to you if you would fill out. Helps us plan for future programs. You know, what you guys want to hear about, so I can find some great speakers like Matt. Can you pick one? Don't even like.
Pick one.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.